Welcome everyone, and Happy New Year. New year, new season. I'm going to say it right now. 2022 will be the unboxed year. Welcome to the show. The title of today's show, this is season 3, episode 1. That's right, new year, new season. Title of today's show is The Importance of Brand Strategy for Effective Building Material Sales in 2022. My name is Will Smith. I am your host, and I gotta say it, I deem this year as the unboxed year because we have a ton of stuff we're going to be unboxing just for you. So if you're not, I know this is blatant right here. If you're not following us on LinkedIn, that's where we put all of our best stuff. So follow Manovite on LinkedIn. That's where we find our best stuff. So the first thing, what are we unboxing today? Well, of course, brand new episode. We got a great guest for today. But first of all, you'll notice the title, new season, new year. Let's go with the new title of this show, and that is Building Products Ecosystem Unboxed. But just for short, we're going to call it Unboxed. So everyone, this is the year of Unboxed. Welcome to the show, 2022. I'm so excited. I feel like I'm rambling, so let's get right to it. We have a wonderful show set up for you. Let's meet today's guest. Tell you a little bit about Susan Milne. She lives in a silver cube floating amongst the trees. And of course, I got to ask about that because that just sounds like an Airbnb commercial right there. So going to ask her about that. So stay tuned for that if nothing else. She identifies as Buddhist, part Buddhist, part Jewish. So a little bit of questions there. So we might ask about that. I think I'm going to go with the trees, though. I got to know about that silver cube. She's traveled to Ireland for a solo bike trip, which I can't go like 3 miles on a bike. So the fact that she went all over Ireland is fantastic. So definitely in shape right there. Loves to throw a good dinner party. So you can't beat that. She is the founder. Susan is the founder and CEO of Epiphany Studios. Let's meet her right now. Please welcome to the show, Susan Milne. Welcome, Susan. How are you?
Well, thank you for the warm welcome.
Of course.
Lovely to see you.
Great to see you too. Susan, just so that our audience understands, Susan is fresh off the heels of a fantastic presentation at Mark Mitchell's Wizard Summit. So, of course, that's where we find a lot of our excellent, awesome, fantastic, insert whatever adjective you want, guests for our show. So Susan, congratulations on a great presentation. That was just fantastic. And welcome. So glad that you are here today. Great to have you.
Thank you so much. It is wonderful to be here. I really am just honored to be on the show. You guys also put on an incredible session at the summit. It was really eye-opening. I think you brought something really fresh to the table.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I was not the presenter. Of course, our CEO, Susan, is referring to the presentation that our CEO and founder, Kevin Dean, presented on ecosystems and about channel management. So certainly, if you have not been a part of Mark Mitchell's Wizard Summit, definitely check it out. Go and see the wizard, as they say. So Susan, let's start off with, I got to know about this cube floating. I read that in your bio and I thought, I got to know about this. So please tell the rest of our audience here today, what is this like? Give us the short version. How did you end up in a silver cube amongst the trees?
Well, great question. Of course, it is one of my favorite stories. I was living in a pre-Civil War home in Richmond, which is where I live. And it was one of those things where the house, it's beautiful, architecturally gorgeous, but it would be one of those things where you would just look and think, was that always a wet spot on that ceiling? It was just constant, as you can imagine, for a house that old. And I was determined to build a modern house. I was fortunate enough to get a lot. It's quite an incredible space. It's a lot in the middle of the city. One of the very first suburbs in the city, and it opens up to the woods. So the woods go all the way down to the river. We have a beautiful river that runs through Richmond. Right through the city, you can actually do whitewater rafting in the city. So I found this lot for sale, but it had a very steep drop off. And when I bought the lot, a gentleman called me from the city, and I was fresh in Richmond from New York. And he called me and he said, "Ma'am, did you buy a lot?" And I said, "Yes, I did." And he said, "What you gonna do with it?" And I was like, "Who is this?" So he explains he's calling from the city. And I said, "I'm going to put a house on it." And he said, "No, you're not." And I said, "You watch me." And he said, "What do you think? You're from California?" I was like, "No, but it is because it's that steep." So when you walk into the house, although it looks like, it's on pilings, with the tallest one being 26 feet in the air. And the lot is so wonky, the shortest is 3 feet. So when you walk in, you're already 2 stories off the ground, off of out the back. So you really are floating in the middle of the trees, and it's incredible.
I absolutely love that. And just one other fact, I didn't know you were coming from New York. Maybe that's why we get along so well.
Yes.
There you go. Not California, but New York. That's so very interesting. What's the weather like right now in Richmond?
Right now, it's actually pretty chilly for us. It's about 40 degrees. It's gorgeous sun, but cold for us. Everyone's like, quite shocked. So,
I have to say, with your description of the city, being able to whitewater raft and everything, I'm ready to go. So I hope you're accepting house guests because I'm ready to go to Richmond
absolutely.
right now.
It is. Richmond is a wonderful city. It really is. It's a tiny city, and it's very livable. Very, very livable.
It sounds wonderful. It really, really does. Thank you for that wonderful description. Tell me about, so I'm guessing that it's probably a beautiful home that you live in because you're the founder, CEO of Epiphany Studios, which of course I've seen your work and I'm very impressed with it. So give us a little bit of history about about your company, how you founded it, how you ended up here.
Sure. So, as I mentioned, I was in New York, and when I was in New York, I had the privilege of working for incredible agencies, both boutique and very large agencies. And I kind of moved up from design to art direction and really worked in a variety of media. I loved it. And then it was time to leave the city. There, you just reach a point in New York where you're like, it's time to go. And found Richmond. Didn't have any family here or anything, but I was really attracted to the amount of ad agencies and design firms they have here, which was it's really quite remarkable, but we have some really great ones, and they're quite large. So I came down here and I started working in a very good sized mid-Atlantic firm, and we did a lot of B2B. And I started working on the architectural products, and I was like, wait a minute, wait a minute. Let me try to understand this. The person who picks it out doesn't buy it, doesn't install it, and doesn't live with it. So we have to sell to all of these people, and then they're all so different. So the architect, what is important to an architect and what looks good to an architect and what is will help solve their problem is completely different than the person who is making the decision on whether it's going to be this building material like these windows versus this flooring because they've got a budget and what they're going to give. And then started to map out that sale. And I thought that was fascinating. And it really kind of turned, I started just volunteering for any client that was a building material. I was like, I am in. And when I was decided to form my own agency, that was really where I wanted to focus.
That is such a great history. And not only that, it also provides such a fantastic segue into my first question. Tell me, and you've given us a little bit already, tell me your perspective on the concept of selling to your customer's customer. And it looks like Susan is looks like we're having some internet issues, but that's okay. As we were mentioned, we were talking to Susan Milne, and hopefully we can get her back in just a little bit. In the meantime, let's just talk about what she had just mentioned, and I think it's very interesting because essentially, what we're asking about is what's your perspective on selling to your customer's customer. So I think it's really interesting, and I think here she is. Susan's coming back. She's with us. We had a few, just a little bit of internet problems here, and that's okay. Susan, are you? Whoops. And we lost her again, but that's all right. So anyway, selling to the customers, what Susan was pointing out in her first answer was that she really you really have to do your best to the architect, to really speak to your architect, to really speak to the customer who has to live in the space and live with the product for years and years and years, because of course it's going into a home. And also, you also have to sell to the contractor that's going to be installing it as well. So I thought that was a very interesting, and Susan is back with us. Fantastic.
Hi, sorry about that.
No, that's okay. You know what? We were talking about this just to give the audience a little bit of history here. Before the show, we were talking about what happens when we have internet issues, and lo and behold, it happened. So, but Susan, you did the right thing. You ducked out, you came back in, and I was actually just kind of trying to fill everybody in on your first answer, which led to a great segue for me, and that is, what's your perspective on the concept of selling to your customer's customer?
Absolutely. You have to. And this, I think, is a really difficult thing for sometimes a manufacturer to be able to fully understand. So you may sell to a distributor who then sells to a contractor who eventually sells to a homeowner. And the types of materials that you create for that sale, whether they're digital or physical, we have to understand that what makes sense to a distributor to take on your line is going to be completely different than what makes sense to a contractor and what they need to be able to turn and sell it to a homeowner, which is also going to be completely different, because homeowners don't have this barrier where they say, oh, this isn't going to be like my usual consumer experience when I'm buying something. If I'm going to be buying roof tiles, well, I've got to make an allowance to understand that they're really more B2B, so things might not be as beautiful as I expect them to be, or as accurate as I expect them to be. So we have to always be selling to our customer's customer, and even our customer's customer's customer.
The customer's customer. Gotcha.
Customer.
Okay.
Yeah. Insert pause.
Right. Exactly. Just let it happen right there. Listen, those of you that are watching live, if you do have questions for Susan, of course, you can certainly engage with us here. We'll do our best to answer your questions live. So let me take it back just a little bit. Tell me now this is of course a challenge, being able to speak to and also sell to your customer's customer and sometimes customer. But what are some of the biggest challenges that you've seen for manufacturers that need to overcome when they're trying to refine their brand message?
That's a great question. I think it's twofold. The first thing is, for most manufacturers, they come from an engineering mindset, right? You're really good at designing, building, the creation of this high performance product. Maybe it's a unique material. Maybe it, just has incredible, performs really well in the field. So that is one mindset. That's the engineering mindset. And that engineering mindset wants to tell you all the features. So they want to say, we passed this test, we did this, we have this certification, we stand up to this level of wind shear, we do all these things. That's the engineering mindset. Unfortunately, selling is using the benefits mindset. So a lot of times an architect doesn't need to know all that certification, because that's kind of price of entry into the market. Like if you can't stand up to a category 5, in Miami-Dade, you're not anything, you're not even in business really. Like you're not a product that's worth even considering. So we have to move into, at that point, we move into benefits, and it's a whole other side of the brain, and it's a nuanced side there. The messaging is much different. So when you have the powers that be kind of controlling what that marketing messaging is going to be, and they'll say, but you forgot to mention this and you didn't mention that. And when you're marketing, it's much more of an intuitive gut reaction. it's a feeling before it becomes a thought. And I think that's very difficult for manufacturers. And then the other thing I see, and this is really with a lot of larger manufacturers or those that have sales teams that either double as marketing or they have in-house marketing teams, is it's very difficult. It's a cliche, but it's so true. It's very difficult to see the forest for the trees. Like, why are we valued? What is important? Manufacturers want to tell you everything. Customers only want to know, whether they're an architect, a facilities manager, a salesperson at a distributor, they only want to know what they want to know. It's what Google has given us, the gift of it's all about me. Like, I type something into Google, it only comes back with what I want to know. What is the most relevant answer? And so I think that's really hard when somebody has put their life, or they have a culture of innovation, and they've put their lives, what motivates these folks to get out of bed every morning is to improve the product, is to come up with new products. And then when you tell them, no one cares about this whole thing you've just spent 2 years developing, it's hard. It's hard for them to figure out how to refine that message. Does
So,
that make sense?
oh, absolutely, absolutely. So, something that you mentioned that kind of hit a chord with me, and I want to boil it down to this statement, and I want to get your reaction to this statement. People buy emotionally and then justify it with the facts or with their brains.
Absolutely.
Is that the mentality that you're talking about? To switch from that engineer brainy kind of messaging and go with more of the emotional? And so what does that mean then?
What it means is you have to find a way, and I think that this is what really I find just fascinating, and what drives me in this industry is you have to find a way to articulate what that feeling is, and how to get there. Like, how do you figure out if it is a feeling before it becomes a thought? How do you uncover that feeling, and how do you communicate it? And then people apply facts over it. So one of my favorite stories that I love, and this is absolutely true, all purchasing decisions are emotional, and that is the bottom line. I had a friend who bought a Porsche 911 as a family car. And I say Porsche because he's English and that's how he said it. So, and then he bought a seat for his daughter for the back, who was a toddler. And he's like, this is a family car. And his justification was, we're going to make a lot of memories in this car as a family. It was completely not a family car. They needed like a station wagon, but that's the truth in life. And that's a really blatant example, but it is very true. We make emotional decisions and then we look for facts. And I put that word in quotation to justify our decisions.
Absolutely. So it's a lot like, would you say that it's a lot like some of these Apple commercials that you see? Obviously, Apple has a very strong brand. I'm an Apple fanboy myself. I've confessed it before, and I'll confess it again on the show. But a lot of these Apple commercials, you look at it and you're kind of like, is this even a commercial for a computer? Is this? Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because what Apple really does for you is it gives you that freedom. It's that creative possibility. It doesn't have to talk about what product it is, because they all are this, they all offer that to you. And I think that is one of the hardest things for people to understand. Your product is not your brand. If you have a strong brand, you will be able to bring in new products and discontinue old ones. And your value is in your brand. Your product really is only one small piece of why you're valued.
That you're so good at segues. This is fantastic. This goes right into my next question. Nice job. What are some of the cornerstones of effective brand messaging for building product manufacturers? What are some of those just cornerstones or pillars, just those absolute tenets of effective brand messaging?
I think they have to be authentic. We live in a world now where this is one of the things I love about millennials and Gen Z is they want to have personal relationships with brands. So that to me, I find just so fascinating and so very cool. So, you see the emergence of brands like Warby Parker, where you buy a pair of glasses, something a pair gets donated. It's a very personal experience. So I think this level of authenticity, I love to see it starting in building materials. We're starting to get some companies that have maybe one or two people that really want to do some YouTube videos, are very active socially. And you start to be able to put that authentic face to your business experience, right? I think so. I think authenticity, I think transparency is huge. Everything that you do, somebody should be able to look into it without it feeling as if, don't pay attention to what's going on in the background. We're, an ethical company when we're not, or something like that. And that is really becoming in the forefront of building materials, with architects being on, the edge of that sort of cradle to cradle and really understanding all this stuff, that level of transparency, authenticity, consistency. Are we this brand that does this, or are we not? Are we only doing it because, we feel pressured into it by the market, or are we going to just, stand true to who we are and take a stand? So I think those things to me are the three biggest ones. It's like, be consistent, be authentic, be transparent. And you can really just be who you are, which is amazing. That you don't have to, there's no rules. We made up all the rules. There's no rules. You can be a door manufacturer that changes the way we think about doors. You get to decide, but you should be authentic, transparent, and consistent.
Either we're going to go with the acronym ACT or we're going to go with CAT. But either way, the letters are the same. So transparency, authenticity, and consistency.
Yes.
Those are the three pillars. Fantastic advice right there. Those of you that are watching live, or those of you that are listening to the podcast in the future, that's one of those rewind moments. So ACT, TACCAT, whatever you want to do, however you want to call it for an acronym. I kind of like CAT because you can be whatever you want. But anyway, you can be who you are, or you can act on these tenets of authenticity, consistency, and transparency. So great advice there, Susan. I love that. So one of the things that you had mentioned, next question here, one of the things that you had mentioned here was that they want to have that personal, especially millennials and Gen Z, they want to have that personal connection. So can you build out a little bit more, explain to us a little bit more, how does brand relate to customer experience? Obviously, it's important, but how does brand relate to customer experience?
Well, that is your customer experience. Like, every facet of your brand is part of your customer experience. So whether, that determines what trade shows you go to, whether it determines, what types of sales folks you have in, how you allow customers to have access to your, is there a chat? How can they find the information they want? All of that is your brand in action. So you can say that you are a high performance brand, but then you make it difficult for your customer to download spec sheets, to find out what the pricing is. What are the lead times? Well, is that the way a high performance brand behaves? I don't think it is. So I think that level of, like, when we look at it from the customer's experience, really saying, like, this is who we are and this is what we believe in, and therefore that's how we act. And I always think, like, when I go to trade shows, we have the sales team at the trade show, or we'll have, the CEO will be at the trade show. Do we know those people, or should we be talking to, like, Josh in shipping? Like, Josh in shipping is the dude who picks up my call, like, we want to see those faces and not like this corporation. So I think you stay really authentic to who you are and translate that brand through the entire customer experience.
So I have visions of somebody in our audience out there building material manufacturer, just they're all kind of watching the show or listening to the podcast or what have you. They're saying, okay, would you say, is your advice before you do anything, ask how this affects the customer experience?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that there's a shroud of mystery around what a brand is and what the customer experience is. When you take it and you really take a diagram and do some identify your personas. There's all these folks, right, from the specification to the installation. So even you may have a product that maybe doesn't get there's a generic spec in place and you can bid for that. But from the specification to the installation, there are a variety of personas along that journey, and we can map out exactly who they are and what do they need at every single step. And that way we have like a very clear checklist, not just what tactics, what tools are we going to be in, are we going to do our sampling through our own site? Are we going to do it through Swatchbox? Are we going to do it through Material Bank? We can make all these decisions, and we have everything mapped out. Now we know who we're talking to and at what point in the sales journey they're at and what do they need at that point. So like to me, it's like a very complicated but cool puzzle that is very clear to map out.
Again, you're the queen of segues right here, because my next question is, because you've kind of given us a little taste of this already. So let's build this out a little bit more. Where do you think manufacturers should start? It sounds like that's a great place to start. So maybe reiterate that a little bit there. But where do they start? What are some of the other pieces to this glorious puzzle that you're talking about that they need to put together? So give us some advice there.
So I think the big thing is really first start with your customer. Once you identify all your personas, talk to actual customers or talk to folks you'd like to be your customers. And really, we talked a lot at the Wizard Summit about active listening. So you want to talk to your customers and understand what they value about you at each point. And the reason that you want to do that is because, again, that whole Google thing, you only want to give them the information they need, but also in their words. So start with your customers. And this is where I think, again, it's very difficult to do at times if you are an in-house marketing team, is because you want to talk to your customers and you want to get them to tell you what's real. And so a lot of times they're not going to say that rep that we have, terrible. They're not going to say, thanks for putting together that beautiful binder and box system with all your samples in it, but we threw it out because we just tore out the samples and threw the rest out because that's not how we work. You don't know how we work. So start with your customer and they will really help you understand with some very open, interviews. We find architects, sample librarians, engineers, facility managers, they want to tell you how to serve them better. They really do. They're so open. They're so interested in saying, and so willing to share, hey, stop sending me all that stuff. I only want this. Add a chat on your website so I don't have to call somebody. They're really clear. And I think once you can do that, it can really crystallize what you need to do.
So in order for a building material manufacturer to be authentic, you need authenticity from your customers. That's what it sounds like to me.
That is perfectly put.
So would you recommend that you do hire somebody from the outside who's not, embedded in the system to get that authenticity?
I think that is to me, this is, I believe that is where your money is the best spent. Because the first thing you have to do before we get into looking, what is Google Analytics is something like 1,400 data points or something you can pull from Google Analytics. Okay, so before, no one even knows what any of that means. Before we start mapping out what our ROI is going to be and what our data that we're going to look at and understand if we can make it actionable and what it means, let's determine first what's going on. So if we know that, if we can determine that the number of requests for samples actually does not correlate to sales, And for some manufacturers, that is true because they have at like a spec that can be easily replaced. So maybe the designer or architect just needs a sample to be able to show it to a client, but they're going to say, we're going to get this or something similar. So we want to know exactly what those data points are that are really going to move the needle for us. And in order for us to do that, let's find out what's going on with the customer. And the only way to do that is to interview.
And they'll be more authentic with somebody who is obviously from outside the organization so
Yes.
that nobody's feelings are hurt, I guess.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we like Bob from we like that sales rep, but the pizza he brings is horrible. Like, we don't need the pizza, just bring us the samples, or you know what, just send us the samples. We don't need to see your face every single time. That's the kind of authenticity we're looking for, right?
Absolutely. And that goes through every single thing, all the way from the installer to, if it's going to go residential or commercial, the owner, that level of authenticity and making sure that we really, let them tell us what to do. And then, that allows us to be really true to our brand. And as you said, as we were talking about earlier, that translates in so many ways. So if we are a product that's about efficiency, we should be efficient in all those areas.
Absolutely. That is great advice. So it sounds to me like if I want to start, really establishing my brand, if I'm a building material manufacturer out there, really wanting to establish my brand or reestablish my brand, we really have to get down to the customer and get the answers from them rather than saying, this is the way that we work. Ask the question, how can we work together?
Absolutely. And, how are we solving their problems? I mean, and what problem do they have at that time? You know, so I think that is figuring out how to do that work together is really the key. And then it feels like a very confident experience after that, because we're kind of not saying we're one thing and having a disconnect in the field. We see that often where maybe a product is really just a beautifully designed product. And it is something that is very desirable in the market, but the supporting communications and the way the sales team is set up and the way the in-house sales is taking care of orders does not match that product. So kind of getting all that stuff to be on the same level is really what starts to feel true. When you go to Apple stores that they always, I don't know, I always think this is funny that they'll actually tell you, I've gone in and said, I want to buy this today. And they're like, not today. We don't have any appointments available. I'm like, I'm trying to buy an iPad. Like, yeah, you can come back tomorrow. So I think it's like, and that fits to me. I'm like, yeah, Apple, they're beautiful. They're, exclusive. It works.
Yeah, that fear of missing out.
Yeah.
I'm not allowed to go into Apple stores anymore, so that's a good 3-hour experience for me. So, and also very expensive. So, as an Apple
Yes.
fanboy, that can get very expensive. So, going back to that relationship that you have with the manufacturer or with the company that you're dealing with, if you're asking them the questions, if you're solving the problems, then you're working collaboratively, then I think that really helps in establishing that relationship. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I think that collaboration is key. It really is. And when you talk to, I think the other thing that's interesting is, sometimes we just view it as sales, right? There's billions of dollars of building materials specified every year. That seems like, just sales, sales, sales. But when you talk to specifiers and installers, they have a real personal relationship um, with the companies, with the manufacturers and the distributors. Who's going to get it to the job site? Who can they count on? It really is about these relationships and this collaboration.
Yeah, I'm not trying to change the sales world here, but a lot of times, just the term, well, we closed that sale, and
Mm-hmm.
that gives such an impression of just like, well, we closed the door, that's it, when really it's just beginning. That whole relationship
Yes.
is just beginning. So let's talk a little bit more about relationships, and why do you think customers are switching brands at a higher rate these days? How can manufacturers also respond to that sort of, this switching back and forth and everything?
Right. Well, I think, okay, so I think that, in the building industry, we have just been so far behind every other industry. And we were talking earlier about, the how quickly everybody adapted to the pandemic. So when you talk to architecture firms, they would say, we have 300 people here. And if you would have asked us a year ago, what we were going to do if everybody had to work from home, we would have had, 3 or 4 teams doing case studies and, projecting out what scenarios could be. And really within 48 hours, they figured it out. So, all of a sudden, they're really sourcing building materials online. And it is really interesting that, Gen Z they don't have any filters. They don't think like, well, why can't I find out about a building material on Amazon? Amazon is kind of my Google in a lot of ways. I go there to find out what products are available. So the industry is really shifting so rapidly. And now the number of, before, if you wanted to search for pricing for windows for a project, you might not be able to do that. You might have to go and speak with different reps. And even then, that is so murky. If you talk to, I once did an exploration on whether there was kickbacks in this industry for a client. And the architects would say, there's got to be something going on, because I have a contractor who can use this one type of material, but everybody else says it's too expensive. But now all that has shifted, because so much of this stuff is online, and it's really democratized the field. And so now, why shouldn't I switch brands? I can actually search and find 20 brands before I would need 20 sales reps to come in and explain to me and put 20 binders in my library and all this stuff. Now I can go online and find it. So people are switching brands, and they're switching really quickly, but this is a huge opportunity for every manufacturer. It's like, well, now I can really start affecting people that I didn't even know were looking for a product like mine. I can have great content, I can have great SEO, they can find me, and I can make that experience incredible. So I think it's an opportunity, and I think it's Gen Z and millennials are driving it, as well as the pandemic.
Oh, that's great, especially seeing it as an opportunity rather than there are too many people out there. We used to be the only game in town. So the way manufacturers can respond to this as an opportunity. So give me an example of some brands that you think they're doing just a great job as far as their brand message is concerned. Who are your favorites?
Well, I think Huber, because I love zip systems. I love the way that they've color coded everything. I think when you go to their trade show booths at IBS, they had the way that they make it experiential. I think I can say to people now, I'm like, oh, that's zip systems. They're like, you mean those green buildings? I'm like, yeah. They're like, I noticed that, people notice, they drive by, we have a big multifamily boom going on here, as I think there is everywhere. And you can really see the difference. It's like when they've got the green zip system to a bunch of like house wrap flapping in the breeze, falling all apart. So I think that they've done a great job color coding, using that opportunity to change the way we view buildings. Literally in the field. I think they've done a great job explaining the benefits, and you find architects really fighting for this. So I think they do a great job. And I think they are probably one of my favorite companies. And of course, more on the design side, on a traditional side is Knoll. I mean, Knoll is the most incredible. They take the way that they translate their products from something that is so beautiful to something that is very effective. They've got incredible case studies behind their designs. And I think that they always have a very high level of design in every single thing they do. So if you're lucky enough to get a Knoll pen, you want to hold on to it. They really do a great job.
Okay, so on the flip side, what brands are successful despite having a not so hot brand message? Any players in that category, in your opinion?
Well, Yes. And, I think that when I think about this company, American Standard, they do all fixtures and bath. And, when you look at their individual products, you think, this is really beautiful. I mean, they have beautiful products. Somehow their branding, their entire experience feels about 15 years ago. Everything feels so dated, and you can see immediately where, maybe to I would say that there are a lot of people that could put some of their products next to the more innovators in that category and really struggle to say, okay, this one is the least expensive, or this is, some, really define, make these really nuanced decisions. Yet, when you look at their brand, you just think, oh, prepare to be disappointed. Like, this is not something that I'm going to be like, oh my gosh, check this out. And so it's funny. It's really actually working counter to its own products.
Oh,
Is
that's
that too
funny.
harsh?
No, not at all. We want authenticity, we want transparency, and you are certainly delivering, Susan. So that's what we're looking for here. So let me ask you. Let me ask you this: what is something that customers still want from manufacturers, but has been proved it's proving to be a challenge for most brands to actually deliver?
Well, I guess I would say there's a couple of things. One, again, this transparency in pricing. Architects and designers, no one understands why they can't know how much something costs. Like, stores seem to have figured it out, other retailers seem to have figured it out. So that, I think, is an issue. I
Do you
think this.
do you think it's so much? Sorry for interrupting, but do you think it's so much that it's like, well, it depends?
Mhm.
It's
Yes.
funny that you say that stores have figured it out. A small might be not as expensive. A small article of clothing might not be as expensive as a 2XL. Well, it's more
Yes.
material for the 2XL, therefore. So anyway, I just see that as a common thing. Well, it depends. I can't tell you the
Yes.
pricing because it all depends, and to me that seems like a non-answer. So now we're okay. Let's dance. Let's do the little
Yeah.
dance here. Okay, like let's do the it depends dance. So anyway,
Absolutely. When you're trying to figure out how to budget a project, it's amazing that you just really can't know. We can never know. I think that transparency. I think the transparency, excuse me, in where it's manufactured and lead times certainly is really big. But I think right now, one of the things that has happened is we have architects have the 2030 mandate to achieve net zero building by that date, but it's beyond that now. So now we're into passive house, cradle to cradle. Architects want to know where something was made, how did it come out of the ground, who took it out of the ground, or how does it get manufactured? Are people being paid fair wages? What are the working conditions like? They are going so deep, and it's not going to stop. So manufacturers have to figure out how to tell their story in a way that is transparent and authentic, and helps architects and designers and facility managers and even homeowners who worry about the health of their home and off gassing, be able to make really smart decisions on what they're putting into projects. So I think that is one of the things that I hear all the time from architects, like, well, then we find out that, they're using oil to do this, and it's not going to help us with getting our certification or whatever standards they're trying to meet, carbon neutral.
I think it's great, especially in that answer that you kind of alluded back to those three tenets you were talking about, the authenticity and the transparency. It's still a struggle for so many building material manufacturers. But I think that I like the fact that, would you say that architects are helping push this issue forward?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And when you see what they're doing in Europe, they're really tight about this. So the building material is the building industry is responsible for, I believe, 30% of carbon emissions. So they take this very, very, very seriously. The biggest carbon sink in a building actually winds up being in the interior design, because it gets, carpeting gets ripped out, all this kind of stuff. So really having some kind of transparency, figuring out what your story is and telling it before your competition tells it for you is really, get ahead of it. I know it can feel very complicated and it's difficult to always understand how do we position this. Sometimes your green sustainable story is in how your product gets recycled. It may not be in the manufacturing, but figure out your story because this is top of mind for architects. There's all kinds of specialists out there who are helping them achieve certain criteria in buildings, and they want to know these things.
Oh, that's great advice. That is really good, especially just pushing that issue forward and not just how it's manufactured, but also how it's recycled. Let's talk, like you said, end to end here, not just, in its current state or where it is, what happens after the fact, which is, that's great. That's great advice, especially what's top of mind for architects and how manufacturers can really tell the story first. Perfect. That was a great answer. Really like that a lot. So tell me a little bit about, we alluded to this a little bit before about, a high performance, if your brand is high performance, then, your website, the ease of use should also be high performance and that sort of thing. So how do you feel that most building material manufacturers, what do you think of their websites, their marketing efforts, maybe their sales processes?
I think that most likely no one from the company has actually ever had to use it. So we've never sat down the CEO and said, okay, tell me, find me a spec sheet and pull these numbers for me or go request a sample. How does your product compare to, what comparison charts do you have? Where's the calculator for this project? I think that most of them don't use it. And then
where's the pricing?
Where's the pricing? And then, whether we like it or not, and I love it, but whether some people like it or not, Gen Z is here and they really, really want full access. They want it easy, intuitive, and they don't want to talk to you personally. So we know that, people are 75% down the sales funnel before they'll ever even reach out to you, which is great. But this generation is even kind of the next step. So I think when you go to the website, it should really help facilitate me to answering my questions. So if I am doing a broad Google search for, some kind of like insulation that has natural properties to meet a certain carbon standard for a building, I should be able to find it. And then it should be able to sort of walk me through everything I need to do to confidently select this product. Instead, what I see a lot of is, we always joke about this, but it is true. Since 1875, we've been making this, no one cares. And then you're telling me a lot about your product, but you're not telling me about my project and solving my problem. So I think if you can switch that lens and then again, make it really easy to use, make it very transparent and there's no reason for it not to be beautiful. I don't know why that is a thing in building materials. They're like, well, we make paint, make it beautiful.
I'm more of like, give me a slick process, make it so easy. And yes, I'm with you. I don't want to talk to somebody. Like, just let's make it as easy as possible. So I always laugh when I see something along the lines of, the CEO saying, we have the best customer experience that I've never even experienced myself. I think that's to your point. You really need to go through, leadership, whether it's the salesperson, whether it's every person in the organization, they need to go through the process so they understand this is what our customers are seeing or potential customers are seeing. And whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, you got to improve on it. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And I think the other thing is that your sales team, whether they're, independent sales rep, dedicated, in-house, whatever they are answering a lot of questions and fulfilling a lot of things for customers that customers would gladly do for themselves. They will gladly if they can find, the spec sheet, they will find it and download it and use it. If they can find the calculator, they'll use it. If they want to know, can this product stand up to this? They could find that information. They will take care of it themselves, and that makes them feel empowered. And it's just it's with their workflow, right? Like, I mean, are you going to go to another website and to get the answer you need, or are you going to go call somebody? Like, I'm going to the competitor's website. I'm not waiting, even though you've been in business since 1875 and you're all about customer service, which I'm really excited for you. So,
That's great. Thank you so much. What I always like to think is, listen, I'm thinking about this right now, and I want an
mhm.
end-to-end answer to my questions, my problems, and then if you can solve for me the issue or help me visualize the project from start to finish, why would I go to another competitor? Maybe for price shopping, but you've answered everything for me. And so
Yes.
I want it all right there. And I think a lot of customers are the same way. Just do it. I'm thinking about it now and I want to solve this issue
Yep.
now. I don't want to call somebody. I don't want to have to ask for a spec sheet. Do it now.
Absolutely.
Oh, it's so good, so good, so good. I'm so glad you're on the show today. This is great. Let me ask you, from 2021, anything
Mhm.
about customer usage or behaviors that really surprised you from last year?
Well, I think we've talked a lot about that notion of being transparent and meeting them where they are. The other thing that I think is been interesting, anything that can help facilitate decisions made by teams that are now spread across, that are not going into an office anymore. So I think I've seen a lot of manufacturers be able to put together ways that teams can share and approve samples, or look at boards, and really kind of helping some architecture firms and design firms, and all the way down to the contractors, really be able to share information and make sure that help facilitate all those sign offs, right? So there's a million sign offs, I think, helping facilitate those. I think because people are working from home a lot of, and I don't know that that's actually going to change in the really big cities where people are now saving an hour each way as a commute. They're like, I'm not going back in that office. So I think things that become very powerful is brands being able to tell stories that really resonate with people, and that online experience is very important. But where we've seen a lot of engagement is combining all of that digital. So really understanding, like, this person's going to be at home, how can they share amongst the teams their choices and their decisions? How can they get access, for somebody who's writing the specifications can get access to everything really easy? But also, you know giving something giving something to these very tactile people that is physical. So we're seeing that you can do campaigns that our best campaigns that are really generating a lot for our clients are campaigns that are a combination of digital and physical. So whether that is giving them a lookbook, a t-shirt, something, somehow engaging with that tactile experience, which really offers brands a chance to be fun and be personal. And combine that with digital is really reaching people in ways that is much more meaningful.
It
So
sounds
I
to
think
me,
that is really the big one.
yeah, it sounds to me like it's the best of both worlds. It's the
Hmm.
digital experience. I don't have to go to the store, but yet I still have that tactile experience. I can touch the product. I can see the product. I can wear the shirt, whatever it is, even something
Yeah.
simple like that. It combines the best of the digital and the physical world. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
So let me ask you this. What are you experimenting with? And maybe that was the answer to this, but what are you currently, without giving away the secret sauce, I know, I get it. What are you currently experimenting right now with, and when it comes to branding?
Well, it really is, the things that we are finding that has been the fastest way for a brand to kind of level up is really through this customer mapping, but then creating these very personal campaigns. So we take all that customer mapping, we understand who they are, what they want, and now we can talk to them in a way that is so personal. And that has been I think that's been the most effective. And also, you guys are big HubSpot. We're big HubSpot fans, and we love how you can do these like really micro campaigns almost. It's just as easy as sending to 10,000 people now that you can send it to 15 architects at these specific firms working on these specific projects that we would be a good fit to. So I love how much you can micro target that way.
I love the micro targeting, because one of my most hated words is when a customer will say to me, "Oh, I want to send out an email blast." Blast, like who wants to be blasted? Like,
I know.
Please, like, hey, can we use a less violent term here? Can we? So I love the micro campaign, the specifics.
Oh, yeah.
And absolutely right. It's all about segmentation. And to your point that you said so many times in this episode, it's about, tell me about me. Tell me about, so the fact that it's so micro, even if it's to 15 people, it still is very highly targeted and very personal. And again, that goes to the relationship, and it just all wrapped up in a bow. I love it. That's great advice.
Absolutely.
Great advice. And of course, you mentioned HubSpot, so, big fan of that. Yeah. Apple and HubSpot, you have my heart when you mention those two things on the show. So last question. This could be anything. That doesn't have to be business related or anything, but what's the best piece? I ask everyone this question. What's the best piece of advice that you have ever received?
This is a piece of advice that, we quite often write manifestos for our clients because we love to give them something that is just really emotional and it really is about them. But I think the best piece of advice is a very Dr. Seussy advice, which is be yourself. I mean, everyone else is taken. You worry about being like the best you, and there is nothing that makes people feel more comfortable than when you are just your most authentic self. And that's the same thing for your company and the same thing for your products. When they are who they are at their very best, you're going to have the best reception.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Dr. Seussian or not, that is great advice. Timeless advice, of course. Just be yourself because everyone else is taken. Love it.
It's
Susan,
true.
I can't believe it's been an hour. Time certainly flies when you are having fun. And of course, this was a fun episode. Thank you so much for being on the show today. Appreciate your time. And I look forward to talking with you. I'll see you at the Wizard Summit, if nothing else. The one hopefully is going to be happening in the spring. So thanks again.
Thank you so much. And I just want to girl fan you guys. I've just been a fan of Manobite for a long time. I love what you guys do. And, we watch you guys and go, that was smart. So thank you so much. Love what you're doing for the industry. And I appreciate you asking me to be on the show.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, Susan, you're a great guest. Thank you so much. And we will talk to you later. All right.
Okay.
All right. Bye now.
Bye.
As you can tell, big fan of Susan. She did a great job on this episode, and there are so many rewind moments. I'd love to kind of encapsulate it all into one place, but I really can't because there are so many great moments in this particular episode. So what should you do? How do you get the best? How do you get the best out of this episode? Well, you got to follow us on LinkedIn. That's where our best stuff is. What we're going to do is, first of all, we convert this episode into a podcast. So wherever you enjoy your podcast, whether it's Apple Podcasts, whether it's on Spotify, whether it's Google, I don't care, wherever it is, we are there. Look for us and certainly find those moments. You can listen to it at twice the speed. I'll be talking even faster than I am right now, but you'll still get the great, important nuggets of wisdom that Susan shared with us today. Also, go to our YouTube channel. Of course, you can watch all the fun stuff, especially when the internet just plays little games with us and gives us those emotional times. So great stuff from Susan today. Thank you again. You have been watching and or listening to, possibly in the future, the Season 3, Episode 1 premiere And the title of today's episode was The Importance of Brand Strategy for Effective Building Material Sales in 2022. And until next time, please join us and any one of the socials. But as I mentioned last time, that the best stuff is always found on LinkedIn. Of course, we're on LinkedIn Live, and of course, we have our YouTube channel. So thanks again, Susan, for your fantastic insights. And of course, we are live every second and fourth week Tuesday at 2 p.m., second and fourth Tuesday at 2 p.m. of the month. Please join us there, and you could be alerted with all the great stuff that, as I mentioned at the top of the show, 2022 will be the year of Unboxed. So join us, be part of the experience, and look for our great guests that are coming up in 2022 and all the fantastic stuff that we are unboxing for you, our audience. So until next time, please like and follow us, and whatever life sends your way or whatever life unboxes for you, may it be great.